My dad used to tell a story about how when he was a little boy growing up during the Depression, he never had any money. You know, he claimed that he just never could keep any money. And I remember one day I was just a little girl, and him and my mom was having a conversation about it. And Mom says, "Well, I can't believe that you never got any allowance at all. I mean, nothing." And he says, "Well, I got an allowance. I just never had any money." And she says, "Well, what do you mean you got an allowance, never had any money? How does that ever happen?" He says, "Well, you know, I had Hoot for a brother. His older brother, Eugene Jr., they always called him Hoot after that. There was a country western singer named Hoot Gibson. And so they called Uncle Eugene Jr., they called him Hoot. He says, Hoot was my older brother. And he says, he never let me have any money. She says, "Well, what do you mean he never let you have any?" He says, "Well, no matter where I hid it, he'd find it. If I tried to hide it under the rug, he'd find it and he'd get it. And if I tried to hide it under the mattress, he'd find it and get it. No matter where I put it, he'd find it." And he says, "I remember a time when Mom gave us each a nickel and told us that we could go to the candy store together." And he says it was about a 2-mile walk to town. You had to cut through the fields and out through the woods there and get to town. And she said that we could go to town and get us some candy at the candy store with this nickel a piece. He says, Hoot had one and I had one. And so we struck out and we got across the field and we got over to the woods. And Hoot says, "Stand up there next to that tree just a second." And he's taking off his belt. He says, I didn't know what he was doing. He says, the next thing I know, he had me tied to that tree with his belt and took my nickel. And he went on to town and spent both nickels on candy and ate the candy, and then came back through the woods and untied me, put his belt back on, and we went on back home. He says, I got no candy. And Hoot had both nickels and bought the candy and ate it. I will never forget that story as long as I live. That Daddy had no money for any candy because Hoot stole it all and tied him to a tree to boot. I'll never forget Mom's reaction. She was hopping mad. She says, "Oh, I would still be beating on him if he'd ever done such a thing as that to me." She says, "I would never get none kicking him for doing that." But I guess that's an example for you of sibling rivalry back during the Depression.